the counties is This is number 1174 with Bill Turner at Sheldon. Bill Turner of Sheldon, Iowa, is farm management specialist for Northwest Iowa, which means that he works with about 170 farmers of this area in helping them in their farm business. That means working with them on records and also talking over with them about their whole business in the profit and loss picture, and covers about a 10-county area here in Northwest Iowa. So it's a real opportunity to find out what's happened to this business of farming, at least in Northwest Iowa. So, Bill, our first question is, are many farmers in this area going to be paying income tax this year?
Well, I would say not, particularly those that are on the accrual basis, Chet. Cash basis probably will.
Well, we have to examine that a bit. Now, we, of course, are talking here with farmers who are keeping accurate and very complete records, and for the most part are some of the top farmers in the area. Isn't that right?
Well, I think they are. I would say we have above average operators in this group that we work with.
Just the very fact that the fellows are keeping records and are improving their farming and are doing a good job. But now you say that not too many are going to file tax, which must mean that they didn't make much money this year.
Well, our records are all kept on the accrual basis.
Well, now you better explain that one then.
Well, that means where we take inventories into consideration, opening and closing inventories along with expenses and receipts. Mm-hmm. And all our records are kept that way.
Well, now you have, here we have, folks, we have a sheet in front of us here in which he has some of the operating expenses, the income, and some of the variations here. Now, obviously, we won't use names because that's one thing in the Farm Business Association. They're kept in confidence. But we can use the letter A, let's say. Take a fellow or two here and give us an indication of what's happened to this farming business the past year or so, particularly the fellows in this livestock area.
Well, one of the first operators we ran into, see, we're just in the process of checking in our records now, so our summaries are not complete.
No.
But one of the first counties I was in, operator came in, couldn't believe his income was down as far as it was. A year ago, he had a net income of approximately $6,300. This year, it's down to just under $1,500, and that means before living expenses are taken out.
Yes, sir. So he had $1,500 to live on this year.
That's right, and he wondered how he lived as well as he has. His
cash didn't seem to be that bad shape?
His inventories had been cut down. In other words, he'd cash those in, so he had a fair cash income. Mm-hmm. But on the accrual base, it shows that his production this year was way under, approximately $5,000 under what it was a year ago.
Let's take another example or two here. Now, these are actual farmers. These are not book theories, are they?
Well, we can. That one isn't too bad. That's only $5,000. Here's another case where they have dropped from an income of approximately $18,000 to approximately minus $3,000. This fellow was quite heavy in livestock.
So he actually he actually has $20,000 less income.
That's right, even a little more than that, less income from one year to the next.
My. What, is that beef cattle?
No, not particularly. It's
just total livestock.
Pretty much total livestock. He has quite a lot of hogs.
And so he worked all year and even lost money doing it.
That's right, and he had a poor crop.
He volunteered his labor for sure then, didn't he? Well, let's take another possibility.
Well, here's an example where a fella had an increase. Actually, out of the 31 records we've completed so far, there's only 2 that have shown an increase in income. This was only a $100 increase on a larger than 240-acre farm. But it wasn't too high in 54, and this year it was up about $100 higher.
Yes, sir.
It was a dairy-hog combination. Without too many hogs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, now, what have we got? If we got any others now, what have you noticed? Now, this is nothing official, and of course you don't have any statistics, but you just simply work with these records all day long, and just what has been your general observation on it as far as the number of farmers who have taken a pretty severe cut this year.
Well, we have, so far, out of the farms we've completed, 1 out of 3 is showing a loss in net income out of the group so far. Now, we may have some of the worst area that I work in where the drought is the worst, but still, a number of these fellows have some pretty good crops yet.
1 out of 3 actually lost money.
Of the records we've run through so far. Now, that may not hold true for the whole association.
No, and it's not. This is nothing official, but we again say these are the better farmers that are in
That's
the
right.
record association.
I might say on the averages here, out of the first 14 farms coming from Woodbury and Plymouth and Lyon counties, the operator's income dropped from approximately $10,000 down to just under $1,200
In 1 year.
in 1 year.
Well, now, I think we ought to get into this thing a little bit. You say that some of the fellows are a little surprised they haven't been pinched quite as tightly on cash, and then they get to going on their records and find out the bottom's dropped out.
Well, I think the expression "a little surprised" is putting it very mildly. Personally, I would say they're really shocked. They weren't aware of it. They've had the cash income, but when they come to work out their records for tax purposes, some of them are saying it's one of the worst years they've ever had. Their costs are running high, and their income has really dropped off.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to get into. I still want to get back to this inventory thing, but now, do you think, have you noticed more of a rise in costs, or has it been a drop in prices, or have you noticed?
Well, individual farms will vary. Now, here's one farm that cash operating expenses, which doesn't include feed purchases, went up about $2,000. But the average for the first 14 farms was down approximately $300 in cash operating expenses. Now, that doesn't include feed purchase, or it doesn't include livestock purchase. That's the repairs and fuel, machine hire, and crop expense, and livestock expense, and such expenses as those.
So costs were down just a little.
In the first 14 farms, they were. Now, these were hit fairly hard with the drought.
So the main thing is just prices.
Prices has been a very big factor. For example, when you inventory at 18 cents in the first of the year and inventory down at 10 cents at the end of the year,
on hogs.
that reduces your, on hogs, yes, that reduces your income considerable.
I should say. Well, now, isn't this inventory business kind of the reverse of what we had in about 52 or so?
It sure is. When back some of those years when they were inventorying at the beginning of the year at 16 and then at the end of the year at 25 cents a pound for hogs, and they were wondering where all the income came from. They didn't have any cash. They had a pretty high tax to pay and not much cash income. Well, this year it's been the reverse. They were on a lot higher inventory level, price level, and at the end of the year they're on a considerably lower level.
Well, let's get this inventory deal straight now. It's is it the value of the same number of hogs and the same number of bushels of corn?
No, it's the value of the corn and hogs and livestock that they have on their farm at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. Now, that they may vary, but it's the
what I was
approximate
thinking,
market
then,
value.
Is it quite a bit that a lot of the fellows have just simply sold their stuff, or is it mainly just been a drop in prices?
Well, in most cases, out of the first 14, there was only 3 that had an increase in inventory at the end of the year over the first of the year. The rest of them, the 11 of them, were all down, some very markedly. Here's one, for example, that's down almost 14,000 less inventory at the end of the year than he had at the beginning of the year. That's a big reduction in inventory. Now, his cash income may have been fairly high, but actually his production this year is way down.
Well, now let's talk about a thing or two here. What's caused this now? Okay. Can't decide whether to look back or look forward, but better look back first. What about crops, livestock? Which crops, which livestock? What looked good from this past year? What made money?
Well, corn crop is the main crop in this area, and as your crop income goes as your corn income generally goes, because that is the high return crop in here. Beans also contribute quite a little, but nothing to what corn does. And this corn crop was, in general, way down. Most of our counties, the yield was less than what they had figured on earlier time. It's getting down now. They're inventorying. They're realizing it isn't shelling out.
Well, now, looking ahead then, and again, this is strictly, I know, your own personal opinion, but you're visiting with farmers about this every day. What do you think a fella can do in this year ahead? Hog prices certainly don't look Well, there's just no indication they're going to improve anywhere in 56, is there?
Well, feeling I have that I can't see too much opportunity to improve the hog price materially unless there's a marked reduction in the number of hog raised. And that I rather doubt.
So far, at least.
So
It doesn't
far,
look
yes.
like it anyway. Well, then, where can a fellow go? He's got to. I mean, he can't. He can't change his operation altogether here. What do
Well,
you suggest he do?
I'll tell you what some of them are doing. We have two operators that are on approximately 200-acre farms that have been employing hired help. They are both letting the men go. One is disposing of a dairy herd and keeping about 12 brood sows back where normally he has 30 to 40. The other farm is not feeding any cattle. He has no cattle on hand. He ordinarily feeds around 60 to 70 head, raises 300 to 400 hogs. He is out of cattle and is down to about 12 brood sows to keep breeding stock back so that when he wants to get in again, he can. Now, they're trending toward grain farming because of the support price on grain.
We've got supports on the grains and open market on livestock.
And figuring less risk on the grain.
Yeah. In other words, that's right. Risk is pretty much
That's
taken
right.
out on the. That's what some of the fellows are doing then.
Well, that's two cases there.
Where
of
they
what's
have
happening.
the acreage, anyway.
Where they have the acreage. A fellow on 80 or 160 acres with a family has got a little different problem, particularly where he's renting. Both these other farms were in general owned farms.
Have you got any idea where this fellow on, say, 160 can go? I mean, where can he, like poultry, doesn't look too good for later anyway, and hogs don't. Well, dairy, you just can't get into it. Have you got an idea where he can go?
Well, he's going to have awful tough going, I think. He's going to have to watch his expenses, both on farm spending expenses and personal living expenses.
I
I
suppose
think
that's the thing you're talking about is that tractor's going to have to hold over a year for sure.
Well, I know a lot of them are going to hold over a year.
Yeah, and I suppose that the buildings can go up with just quite a bit cheaper construction.
Well, there's
Not
some painting.
cheaper
There's some
construction.
painting that doesn't have to be done, some repair that don't have to be done this year can be put off, and a lot of this it just naturally will be put off.
Yeah, I suppose a fella can always take a vacation around Iowa instead of to California or something.
Well, I don't know how many are going to take vacations, particularly some of these. Particularly these younger operators are the ones that's in the most spot because of the limited capital that they have and the debts that they have.
Well, we smile a little bit there, but actually what we're talking about is that there is a chance to cut costs when we really get down to it, and we find out, don't we, some of our buildings and some of our methods have been a bit more expensive than they need to be.
Well, one illustration, one of the operators we have has been feeding this year in the neighborhood of better than 60 pounds of protein per 100 pounds of gain. His protein cost been over $4. Well, when he found that in his records, he has studied his records, and he's going back and cutting his protein cost down considerably on that. And he says he's going to produce his pork for $1 or $2 less next year.
You very well. Now, the one thing you mentioned there is he looked at his records.
Well, he had the record. He's had them for quite a while, and he knows what's in them. He had this feed return on them, worked out as to what his gains were costing. And he's making considerable change in it. He's studying those, and they mean a lot more to him now than they did a few years ago.
I'd say. Well, it's so important that we have records for this big business of farming. Here we're working with capital investments of $20,000, $40,000, $50,000, and we certainly need records.
Yes, when some of these farms have sales, cash income during the year running up to $80,000 or better,
Gross.
that's an awful lot of income there.
And we
to not have any records.
yes, we certainly need accurate records, and that's, of course, where your field comes in. And how many fellas do you have who were charter members in the Record Association for Northwest Iowa back in, what, 38?
1938, we have around 50 to 60 of them left in the association yet.
Still here after 17 years, so they must feel it's really worthwhile.
Well, I think they do, or they wouldn't be in. We might say, too, we've had about 130 that have had 10 years of records with us.
Well, that speaks well for those who have found what records can do in increasing their profits. Well, thanks a lot, Bill Turner. It's been good to visit with you.
Glad to visit with you, Chet.
Bill Turner of Sheldon, Iowa, who is the farm management specialist that works with some 170 farmers in northwest Iowa in helping them to keep good records and also in working with them in the exchange of ideas for more profit in this farming business.
I wonder how that would sound played back now.